Joel Embiid is one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. He's averaging over a point per minute this season, which is some Wilt Chamberlain type nonsense. Only Embiid's doing it with fewer possessions to work with. You may remember this graphic from our deep dive on Wilt Chamberlain's film, where Embiid's MVP season was one of the great scoring years in league history. Only he's crushed that in 2024, posting the highest percentage estimate of his team's points we've ever seen. Meaning, for every 100 points Philly scores with Embiid on the floor, Joel averages 43 of them. Since 2019, he's scoring just under 30 points per game on 62% true shooting. And if he maintained that pace, he'd be one of the best playoff scorers in NBA history. Only his postseason numbers have fallen off a cliff in that time span, as he's been criticized for failing to reach the conference finals. So the big question is, why is this happening? And has anything changed that will allow Embiid to actually dominate in the playoffs moving forward? In 2018, the process 76ers finally emerged from their cocoon, winning 16 straight games to close the season behind Embiid and Ben Simmons. Remember him? They actually won their final 8 without Joel, who broke his orbital bone on a handoff with a teammate, giving us the phantom of the process. But they were upset in a shocking sweep against the Celtics, who were playing without Kyrie Irving. I'm not sure how much the mask bothered him, but this was actually one of the healthiest playoff runs he's had in his career. In 2019, knee tendonitis had him in and out of the lineup down the stretch, and he missed Game 3 in Brooklyn, and then against the Raptors played with a gnarly stomach virus that threw him off in Game 2. In 2021, he missed Game 5 of the first round with a slight meniscus tear, played through that in the second round, then broke the orbital again in 2022 while playing through a torn thumb ligament, missing the first 2 losses against the Heat before finishing the rest of the series. And last year, he missed 2 more playoff games with a knee sprain before grinding through the Boston matchup. So, in many ways, injuries are the reason we haven't seen Embiid go off in the playoffs, but I think there's more to the story. Watch these 3 possessions from Game 1 of the Raptors series. Marc Gasol pushes a slimmer Embiid way outside on this catch, then he settles for a slightly different looking mid-ranger than we see today. Later in the half, he faces up on Gasol, but ends up turning his back to him and struggling to find a comfortable move before throwing up a rough hook. And you might watch these plays and think that Joel looks different because he's injured, but this is close to how he looked when he was healthy because he just lacked the face-up game and balance that he developed in later seasons. He didn't have that same patience on his move and sometimes went a bit too fast, and he also improved a lot as a shooter. He was just 32% from downtown in his first 4 years, and 40% on 2-pointers outside 15 feet with slightly different mechanics on his jumper. Compare that to 2021, where his shot was smoother and more compact, and all of a sudden he was a 36 or 37% three-pointer. His mid-range leveled up a ton too, with more fluidity and better balance, and he's been at 49% on his long twos since then, while taking twice as many. And this completely unlocked his face-up game, where he could attack defenders crowding his shot and use his size advantage at the rim. So by slowing down a little, he could play the angles on these drives and use his strength and power like he was some supersized wing. Now, before his injury at the end of this series, he averaged 36 points per 75 on 75% true shooting, and Philadelphia was plus 35 per 100 with him on the court. It's a small sample, but a glimpse at the utter dominance the upgraded Embiid could unleash on a weaker opponent. In the next round, we don't know if that minor meniscus tear limited his performance or if it even occurred on that big fall, because he certainly looked great at the start of the series. In Game 1, the Hawks showed him basic coverages where they didn't always bring a double, and when they did double, it was from the baseline, often leaving that far corner shooter open. And so, despite his passing issues at the time, this is a mechanical pass on a diagrammed play, JoJo could still comfortably skip it out of that baseline double, and he had a monster start to the series. But the Hawks changed the coverages as the series progressed. A second big doubles him here, and we get a little more of that mid-range magic. And by Game 4, they were bringing a double off the entry passer like this, where there's no comfortable outlet for Embiid, and the entire thing is pretty rocky. And they were also bringing a late double from the top, so Joel's distracted processing all these different looks. Jump ahead to Game 6, here's that double from the baseline again. The skip pass is there, but he never throws it, and Capella's sitting on that left hand, and it turns into a charge. Here's another one where John Collins shows a double team, but doesn't actually come. The defender from the top doubles once Embiid faces up, and the pass is just too soft, but the Hawks actually blow their rotations, and it's a bucket. Over the last 5 games of that series, he averaged 27 points on just 55% true shooting with 5 turnovers per game because he couldn't regularly punish these double teams with his passing. And all these different looks are mentally taxing and chipped away at his decision making. A similar thing happened last year against an undersized Nets squad who threw bodies at him constantly. JoJo averaged 20 points and 5 turnovers in the 3 games before his injury. And despite some improvements as a passer since the 2021 playoffs, there were still some speed bumps. The double comes here, and instead of reading how this defender plays 276ers, he telescopes on the double teamer's man and misses a potential layup at the basket. Instead of seeing the entire floor here, he's anticipating the double coming from the weak side, so he misses Tobias Harris on the slip. When he sees it, it's too late, and the pass is an adventure, and they never really find an advantage. But there were also improvements. He feels the double coming here and looks to pass. Harris tells him the corner is open, and he snaps it over for a great look. This time, the help comes from that same spot. Harris again says to skip it, but Joel trusts his process and anticipates the defender rotating, and that's a nice pass that should be a layup. So he's started to show more patience and understanding of these coverages, waiting for the help defender to commit to the corner and passing off the dribble for a layup. And this one outright manipulates the rotating defender, waiting for a double only to ball fake him out of the way, and now we are talking. Embiid also tried attacking before the double came, and this was a mixed bag, but he certainly forced fewer shots in this series and posted a 61% true shooting with a really good team offense when he was on the floor. He's also out on the perimeter on a lot of these catches, and that changes his sight lines for reading the floor, which is fascinating because this year, Philly's had him face up a ton on the outside, either to score or to initiate their new offense as a handoff hub that we broke down at the start of the season. This effectively opens the court for him to see and drive, and so the combination of spacing and his improved tempo and body control has really amplified Embiid's driving game this year, working from the outside in. Joel's frequency of drives was slightly below league average for his first few seasons, despite being fairly efficient on those plays. But his drives have increased in the last few years as he improved his perimeter game, and they've jumped under new coach Nick Nurse, where he's also in the 97th percentile on his scoring efficiency on these drives. Nurse's new offense has completely opened the floor for Joel as a 3-level face-up scorer, and that also means he's in a better position to handle double teams that are thrown at him. Go back through those prior playoff runs we just looked at, and notice how often his back is to the basket, so he can't see the defense. Look at the difference here. He brings it up, which means he can watch this wing defender cheating over toward him, so he lasers it to a deadly shooter. that collapses the defense and gets him a wide open three, but instead he just decides to show off, and that is ridiculous. Nurse's spacing also makes it easier to punish doubles. The paint is wide open here, so teammates can cut into space, and watch him move a weak side defender with a ball fake to then free up a layup. Compare that to this mess, where Simmons is parked in the lane, Matisse Thybulle cuts into him, and it's basically a free double team because no one is open for Philadelphia. But in 2024, the lane is wide open, he can see the double coming clearly, and it's a decisive pass to a good shooter. So the spacing is better, and Embiid's decision-making is better. He has a huge driving lane here, and when the defense collapses, he doesn't force a shot or telegraph anything. He actually goes to the up fake and then snaps a no-look that leads to a warm-up shot. It's much harder to double in an offense with more activity. Tyrese Maxey's always hitting Embiid and chasing after the pass for a handoff, which sets up these tricky two-man actions, where Joel has a mismatch after a switch, but touches it back to Maxey, and multiple defenders are worried about him cutting back for a handoff. That occupies the strong side defenders, so when Joel gets it, it's an easier read on the backside double. On this one, everyone's moving, Maxey chases the ball, then exits out the other side, and that creates a ton of space for Embiid to attack, and it's hard to send an immediate double while playing this straight up and chasing all these cutters. This one's more subtle, where Maxey actually screens for Embiid, and then this help defender wants to sit on his right hand and crowd him, so Harris cuts through to pull him out of the way and free up space in the mid-range. They've even gone to a Nuggets pet play for Nikola Jokic, where all the screening and cutting occupies would-be double-teamers and gets Embiid a dangerous catch. And just like Jokic, teams don't want to switch a smaller player onto Joel, so when the double does eventually come, everyone else is scrambling to recover, and it's more target practice. All this gets us back to Embiid's scoring game, where he's better than ever, yet it's harder to send help without paying attacks, and he's more patient and improved as a decision maker. He's entering the 2024 playoffs with yet another injury question, recovering from a meniscus surgery that will challenge his conditioning, although that might be a larger defensive concern than an offensive one. And his defensive presence is a big part of this equation. Embiid can be a formidable rim protector. It's one of the reasons his plus-minus footprint in the regular season has that MVP level signal we talked about in the latest Luka Doncic video. And even with the injuries and his decline in box score numbers, Embiid's playoff plus-minus has been equally as impressive over the last 5 years. We can quibble about the lack of deep runs and small sample, but what's been clear is that Philly has benefited from his defensive presence while struggling immensely to generate offense without him. It's possible Nurse's new system helps a bit when he's on the bench, but Embiid is the central hub that really makes this offense work. With him and Maxey in the lineup this season, the 76ers played at a 65-win pace. Without him, they played at a 33-win pace, one of the biggest changes ever over a large single-season sample. And much of that change is on offense, where Philly has the second best offense in the league when he plays, but they've had the 22nd best offense without him. There's still noise in a 35-game sample, but this system doesn't really work without Joel. The only other primary initiator is Maxey, and he synergizes well with JoJo's attention as a screener and handoff setter. Defenses don't have to worry about switching when Embiid goes to the bench, so coverages can shift to slowing down Maxey, and he's seen a 7% drop in his true shooting in the games Embiid has missed. So, to me, this is the best version of Joel we've ever seen. He's more skilled with the ball, a little more patient, reads the game slightly better, and is the centerpiece of a system that orbits around his considerable perimeter strengths. Injuries, of course, are a big reason he hasn't had a signature playoff run. But he was also hamstrung by an offensive system that failed to protect his weaknesses, and with the creative Nick Nurse and an upgraded set of skills, I'm excited to see how this playoff process plays out in the future. To support this channel, check out patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. We have an historical database there where you can look at Embiid stats by playoff series or multi-year playoff runs that compare to everyone else in history. As always, thanks for watching this one, and I hope you are having a great day.